like to thank my friend Tarena for the generous and always embarrassing introduction. But I want to start, actually, first by a kind of footnote of what I said yesterday. I see most of the faces here are familiar from yesterday, so it's just as well that I can manage that. Now, I talked yesterday about Hadrian's villa and Diocletian's villa, and I rather assumed that they would be familiar, but apparently they're not. So, just to indicate briefly, they were the villas of two emperors, both of whom lived for quite a long time. Hadrian, at the end of his reign, from about 130 AD to 138 when he died, Diocletian after 300 AD. So there's about a 200-year period between the two villas. They're entirely different in character. And I didn't talk very much about them because, as I said, I did rather assume that they were familiar. So let me just rehearse 2 or 3 small details. To begin with, the villa was divided into 2 parts, very clearly. One to do with leisure and one to do with business. And it's, in a sense, the element I spoke of, the maritime theatre, which was a kind of hinge between the 2 areas. So, for instance, this pool and this area, the 2 apses, are the emperor's private walk. And as you see, the north point is there. He could walk either in the sun or in the shade. The imperial walk was this. And he had on one side this enormous pool and a large open garden. But in fact, it's this which is the private area, and this which is the business area, which is accessible from outside there. It was a very complicated processional route, and he received ambassadors and he received official delegations there. So the business part was actually rather important. But he was considered himself, certainly, a man of great learning. He was very attached to his Greek roots. He was a fluent Greek speaker and writer, and one of his great enterprises was rebuilding Athens. So his connection to Greece was part of the literary culture of his time. In fact, certainly about the break of the era, educated Romans were expected to be able to speak Greek, rather like people in the previous century were expected to be able to speak French. So it was a polite language. Now, what I want to emphasize is that there are these 2 parts to the villa, parts of leisure and the part of work, and that they were united by this curious element. Can you go forward one? And this is the maritime theatre. Now, it's not clear what the maritime theatre did. It was a complicated piece of waterwork, and as you see from the plan, it was also an elaborate piece of internal and external volume, manipulated both by the walls and by the columns. Can you go back? What, of course, is struck everybody who's looked at the villa as being peculiar are the different shoving up of volumes against each other, apparently without any internal logic. But in fact, the logic relates to the maritime theatre. And all those different directions that you see on the plan, sorry, I'm pointing the wrong way, that direction, which of course is the north-south, then that direction, as well as that, are all related to the internal geometry of the maritime theatre. So it acts as a hinge, but it also acts as the geometrical governing element of the whole complex. Now, obviously, in terms of some of the things I said yesterday, Hadrian had all the area needed for the produce to maintain the villa as a self-contained, virtually self-contained element, economic element. The Romans did go in for specialist condiments, for specialist foods, like we do. We import our tea and our coffee, we import other things, we import an awful lot of fruit, exotic fruit which we used. The Romans imported fish sauce in large quantities from Syria, but we all have different tastes. Hadrian was born in Spain but adopted by the ruling Emperor Trajan and inherited the throne as in a fairly orderly fashion and left his succession in a fairly orderly way. Diocletian was elected by the troops. He was in Ilium, that is, he came from a part of the world we used to call Yugoslavia. Probably he came from somewhere near Salona, which is in Croatia, and when he decided to withdraw from the government of the empire, he settled back in his homeland. He's remembered, perhaps unfortunately, as a persecutor of Christians, but he was also a very able and very tough administrator. And when he built himself his palace, although it was isolated, he built it on what had been, in fact, an agricultural settlement. Now, this was an agricultural settlement. It was also, I think I mentioned this yesterday, a wool production enterprise. And though the layout of the palace conforms to Roman